Hi, friends. I'm Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, immigration attorney at Lincoln-Goldfinch Law, where we bring peace of mind and security to immigrant families. We are based in Texas, so right on the front lines of the U.S.-Mexico border issues, but we are also a virtual firm and are available to represent people all over the globe and in the 50 United States. I'm here on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Central with you on all the social media platforms live to talk through updates of what's going on politically, to talk through your questions about your cases. Specific case questions are okay. I've got a bunch of questions here, but also I will prioritize your live questions. And at the end, we'll talk through a tip of something you can do. And I've got a strong tip for you this week if you want to get involved. So let's kick it off with the news of the week. We have a lot, and it's heavy, as it has been for several weeks now. So the first point of news, which is really the biggest news item in this country right now, is about the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He is the Salvadoran man who was erroneously deported to El Salvador after he won a court case and protection called withholding of removal. The Trump administration deported him to El Salvador, and his case went all the way from the lower federal courts to the appellate courts up to the Supreme Court, which ruled in a 9-0 decision that the government must facilitate his return. And in blatant defiance of that order, the Trump administration began to not cooperate with the lower federal court that was asking them to show how they are facilitating the return. But also, in what was just so upsetting and shocking, there was a press conference yesterday with the president of El Salvador, who was invited to the Oval Office, and he and Trump held a press conference where he said, I'm not going to bring him back because that would be smuggling a terrorist back into the United States. Let me be clear. There is no actual evidence that Abrego Garcia is a terrorist or was a member of a gang. And does not have a criminal record. He has a U.S. citizen wife. He has 3 kids born in the United States. And he's currently, we think, if he's alive, detained at CECOT, which is the confinement for terrorism in El Salvador. It is one of the most horrific places imaginable on this planet. It is a modern day incarceration camp. Some people are calling them extermination camps because there is zero due process, zero communication with the outside world, and people who are placed in there stay there for life. There's no sentence to be served and release to be had. Some people were looking on Google Maps and zooming into Google Maps, and it looked like there was a section on the back of this facility that was covered, the ground was covered in blood, and it looked like it appeared that maybe there were even bodies piled up in this area. It was hard to make it out, and Google Maps has now shut down the ability to look at that facility. So it's the stuff of nightmares. And the fact that the Trump administration is just blatantly, they're just lying. They are lying and mischaracterizing the Supreme Court order. They did that yesterday. They put up the most ridiculous announcement on the Department of Homeland Security webpage, and they're just defying the court order. So this is the moment. This is the moment in our nation's history where the executive branch stops caring whatsoever what the courts are telling him to do. So Congress has already capitulated to Trump. The court system is not capitulating, but Trump knows that he's got the army. So it has occurred. The thing that we've been waiting for has occurred. And so it is the moment that matters more than anything else. And I strongly urge everyone to take action. If you have not taken action yet, please, this is the time where you pick up the phone and you call your legislators and you say, this will not stand. This will not stand that the president is defying court orders. Congress must step in and get involved. So please, if you do nothing else today, call your legislators about the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Next point of news is about the Social Security Administration. They are working with the Department of Homeland Security to deactivate Social Security numbers of immigrants who have parole-based work permits. So if people are getting notifications from the Social Security Administration about the cancellation, please call an immigration lawyer. There was a court block on the cancellation of the Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela parole program. This just occurred. So it's not lawful for these Social Security numbers to be revoked, and people who are getting these revocations should bring lawsuits. And there are lots of nonprofits and impact litigation shops that are working to help people. Reach out to my team, and we'll see if we can help you. There is also a task force led by Elon Musk to revoke paroles and deactivate Social Security numbers. That's a related update there. We are seeing an expansion of prisons, private prisons in the state of Texas. There's a center in Dilley, which is about 45 minutes south of San Antonio, that was a family detention center about 10 years ago. It's been closed and it's reopening. It houses about 2,500 people, including children. So there will be people detained there. And unfortunately, the nonprofits that have been given access to these facilities to give legal orientation programs where they go in and they talk to all the detained people and they say, okay, you're detained. These are your rights. These are, the options available to you. This is how you prepare for a credible fear interview, et cetera. All the funding for that programming has been immediately revoked, and these nonprofits are no longer able to go into these detention centers. So these people are going to be held in these detention centers, many, I'm sure, without due process or access to counsel, which is really distressing. Of course, all of this is distressing, but it just is. The Trump administration is using a section of the INA from 1952. This is the ground of deportability that Mahmoud Khalil was arrested under. He was the Columbia University activist, the pro-Palestinian activist who's a green card holder who was just picked up for leading protests. They charged him with deportability under this ground, which says the Secretary of State, if he has reason to believe that this person's activities will have adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States, then they can charge them as deportable. That is the ground of deportability that was used against him, and it's now being applied to other permanent residents. For example, there was a man who was also involved in some of the pro-Palestine protests who attended his naturalization interview. He's a green card holder, and he was detained at his naturalization interview. So that does seem to be happening. Really, a lot of this is related to the people who have been heavily involved in the pro-Palestine protests. Another data sharing between Social Security. This one is with the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. Of course, the tax agency. Today is tax day, so everybody's thinking about the IRS. They are sharing some data with ICE, which is raising concerns, of course, that ICE is going to use that data in their immigration enforcement. Now, I will say that this isn't just a blanket, open book into the IRS database on ICE. ICE has to request specific information, but they are getting information from the IRS in terms of like work history, employment, address history for people who they're looking for. So if ICE is already looking for someone and they need the IRS data to help find them, they're having access to that. And the last item for our news update, the Trump administration is going to require the money exchanges like Casa de Cambio and Western Union that are along the US-Mexico border to document every cash transaction between $200 and $10,000. So every customer who's going to a Western Union in the US border, the southern border, who's sending money back home, you're going to have to provide your Social Security number to Western Union, and then that information could be shared with the government. So more data sharing between Social Security, IRS, money exchange services, and ICE is ongoing. All right, I'm moving into the questions. I have a live question from Ado and TikTok. What can happen if your spouse sends a letter to USCIS to deny your 751? Okay, so the 751 is when you have conditional residency, and that is when you've gotten the 2-year green card because you got your green card through marriage and you were married for fewer than 2 years when you were approved. At the end of 2 years, you have to remove the conditions on your residency, and you usually do that by filing a joint filing where you say, together we are requesting you remove conditions and give me the 10-year green card, and you attach evidence that you're still living together. But if in the case where the couple has already separated, then you can do a good faith marriage that ended in divorce, and you have to show that there has been a divorce. Or you can do extreme cruelty if the immigrant has suffered cruelty, any type of abuse, physical, verbal, emotional, sexual, financial abuse counts. Then you can file that. It doesn't require a divorce. Or if the immigrant has extreme hardship, meaning you can't return to your country because you'll suffer some sort of harm if you go home. Those are the ways that you remove the conditions on a 2-year green card without the help of your spouse. If you file the cruelty waiver, then the government is prohibited from talking to your spouse. They can't receive information or give information. So it depends upon how you are filing for the removal of conditions. Otto, I think you should definitely have a lawyer representing you yourself, not your spouse. So reach out to us if you need some help with this, and we can help guide you through what to do. Next question. Can I be detained or deported even if I have a case waiting with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service? Yes, you can technically be detained if you have a case waiting, but some cases have more protections than others, and you definitely want to talk to a lawyer. So tell me what kind of case you have pending, and we can talk about it. Any updates on green cards based on refugee or asylum from Wordsmith? No, the update is what it was last week or the week before, which is that they're holding those applications, and they're not approving green card applications for refugees and asylees. That's not legal. And I'm sure somebody will file a mandamus in federal court, and I'm sure a federal court will order that they have to proceed with those applications, but that's going to take a while. So those cases are still being held in abeyance, which mostly impacts, green refugees and asylees can be here in legal status, but it impacts your ability to travel easily. So it is problematic. What would happen if someone actually gets detained? Can we assure they won't be deported? What's challenging about answering these questions is that up until the last 20 years that I've been doing this, I could receive a question and then tell you this is the way it'll go because this is the way the law works. We are in a lawless era. The times are like they never have been before. So what I can tell you is what the law says. What I can't tell you is that the president or the Department of Homeland Security is going to follow the law. And I just don't even know what to say that is the reality and that I'm saying that, but that is the truth. That is the truth. We are in an era where the Department of Homeland Security does not care about the law. They do not follow the law. They don't care about what federal judges say. They will blatantly lie and mischaracterize what the government is saying. And so that's just the reality that we're living in. And I can't tell you what to do with that information. I don't know what to do with that information myself. But I'll answer the question and tell you what the law says. That's what I can do. So if someone actually gets detained, in order to assure they don't get deported, what you need to make sure is that they don't sign anything. They don't agree to a deportation, right? And ICE will threaten people and they'll say, if you don't sign this, you're going to be detained for 10 years. You're not eligible for a bond, et cetera. There's all sorts of stuff that they will say in order to get somebody's agreement to a deportation. Don't sign anything without reviewing it with a lawyer. ICE is not your friend. They are not often telling you the truth when they're making these threats. If you don't sign anything, you have the right to fight your case and stay in this country and go before an immigration judge if you have been here for longer than 2 years or you have a fear of returning to your country. So those are the things to keep in mind. If you're being processed by immigration and you've been detained, make sure you can prove you've been in the country for longer than 2 years so you have that evidence at the ready. And if you are afraid of returning to your country, that you explicitly state that and you ask for asylum and that you do not sign anything and you speak to a lawyer. Okay, so those are the ways that you should be able to stop a deportation under the laws. But again, that assumes that ICE will follow the laws. I'm currently in the USA on an L2 visa. I'm 20 and I have fallen in love. I want to get married. But I wasn't sure if I should get married on my current visa. I don't intend to stay here afterward. Oh, sure. So you don't want to stay here permanently, was what I understand. You don't want to go for the green card. You can definitely get married on the L2. The L2 is what's called a dual intent visa. There's only two of these. The H-1B and the L1 are the two dual intent visas that allow you to take actions leading toward permanent immigration. I mean, you can get married. Anybody could get married. But the L1, you could get married and you could even file for the green card without jeopardizing your visa. If I don't have any documents proving my status, how can I check if I'm a permanent resident or a citizen? Is there a website to check this? And that's an interesting question. Most people know this because you were born in the US, or you had a green card, or you're naturalized, or you need to talk to your parents. I imagine what you're saying is, I don't know, my parents don't know, or they're gone, and I don't have any way to check this. We could do what's called a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act request, where we check all the government agencies. In our office, when we do a FOIA, we check 5 different agencies. We're going to check with Border Patrol and Citizenship and Immigration Service and the Immigration Court and ICE removal operations, et cetera, to get everything we can. So that would be the way to do it, is to check and see what we can get from all of the FOIAs. What are the possible ways for B1, B2 visa holders to get work authorization in the United States? So you can't work under a B1, B2. That's not permissible. But if you get a work permit, you can work. And the ways to get a work permit are if you have a pending green card application, or you have an employment visa, or some other type of like humanitarian visa that comes with work authorization. So it's a vast array of possibilities. I mean, there's literally hundreds of ways that someone can get legal status in this country. This is why people need to consult with immigration lawyers, because it's really complicated, actually. So go to a lawyer and find out what your options are. But just by virtue of having a B1, B2 tourist visa, you cannot work. That's a violation of your visa. I left the US in October 2019 without a travel document after winning my asylum case. I traveled to a neighboring country with my Libyan passport and did not return to Libya. Can I go to the US Embassy in Tunisia for an entry permit to the United States? You can try, but it's going to be really tough. And I understand you left over 6 years ago. I think you're going to have difficulty. You're supposed to get the reentry permit before you leave the country, but it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt to try. My uncle applied for an F4 visa for my dad. That's a sibling petition, U.S. citizen to his uncle to dad, as brother to brother, okay? And the priority date is April 4th, 2007. The I-130 was approved in March 15th, 2012. When I log in, I don't see my name, but my parents are listed. My date of birth is 1994. I'm currently 25. I know I'm above the age for consideration, but have I aged out according to the CSPA? So the CSPA, this is like one of these fun law school exams. The Child Status Protection Act is a law that essentially freezes the age of the beneficiary of an immigrant petition while the petition is pending. So that's math I can't do on the fly. I need to get out the calculator and look at the priority date. My guess is you have aged out. If you're 27, the case looks like it was pending for 5 years, then you're already more than 21, even if you subtract those 5 years. So I think you've aged out and this petition won't help you. That's what it seems like to me. A live question via Instagram, Maria H. Mine. My husband and I married December 2022. Since that is less than 3 years, is it true we cannot naturalize him via marriage? He's a permanent resident. It's 3 years from the date he got his green card, not from the date of the marriage, Maria. So whatever the date of the green card is, if you're still married and living together, wait 3 years minus 90 days. So you can file 90 days early. But it's 3 years for you all from the date of the green card. Hello, my B2 visa expires on March 4th, but I filed for asylum before it expired. I'm worried I might be detained at my fingerprint appointment. What's the difference if I apply for asylum before or after my visa expires? Are there any benefits either way? There shouldn't make a difference between before or after, and technically, asylum seeker who goes to a biometric appointment should not be detained. By and large, people are not being detained, okay, at their biometrics appointment. The people who are exceptions to this rule are people who are Venezuelan or who were admitted under one of the Biden parole programs. Those are the people that the Trump administration is really going after. And so I think if you are Venezuelan or you entered with CBP1 or you entered under parole, you should talk to a lawyer before you go to biometrics. Anybody else, you're probably fine. Can I be detained if I'm in the process of obtaining a green card under the U visa? So the U visa, you get the U visa for 4 years, and 3 years after you get the U visa, you can apply for the green card. So if you're filing for the green card, that means you already have the U visa and you shouldn't be detained. If you're filing for the U visa, you're not in legal status until it's approved or you get deferred action. So probably it depends on where you are in the process. I need more information. But if you're filing for the green card and you already have the U visa, then you are protected. I have an EAD card, a work permit, a valid driver's license, and my I-485 is pending. I'm married to a U.S. citizen. Can ICE deport me if they detained me? No, they shouldn't be able to deport you, especially if you've been here for longer than 2 years. Just remember, don't sign anything, carry evidence that you've been here for 2 years or longer, and if you have a fear of returning to your country, make sure you state that clearly if you get detained by ICE. But I haven't seen them going after a lot of people in that situation. There was the one couple, the guy who was a Trump voter actually, and his wife who had applied for adjustment of status, but they flew to Puerto Rico. And on their flight back, they were detained. She was detained, but it was because she had traveled to another country. So they're not really doing those arrests domestically. We're not seeing that. Sparkler via TikTok. Are interview dates in Juarez prioritized by documentarily qualified or by priority date? That's a great question. I think that's going to be by documentarily qualified because you don't get put on the list for the schedule until you've completed everything with the visa center. So that's what I'm going to say is that it's let me think about this. Yeah, they're not going to go by priority date. They're going to schedule based on documentarily qualified. But they're really backlogged still. My sister-in-law is in the process of getting her papers. Would she still be deported if she gets stopped by police officers? It depends on what process she's in. So we need to know more about what kind of process she has going on and whether she's protected. Some people are, some people aren't. My husband is Irish, and when he moved here, he applied for a status change after we got married. He would then be considered documented in independent status. If he applied for a green card, an I-485 adjustment of status, then he should be in protected status and he should not be detained, especially if he's Irish. I doubt they're going to go after him. Oops. If I'm in the process of seeking legal status, does that prevent me from being detained? A lot of questions like this. Maybe. It depends on what type of status or what type of legal status you've applied for. A lot of people who have a case pending can still be detained. But you just have to know how to protect yourself if you get detained. What about for a toddler? I'm a citizen and applied for a CRBA, consular report of birth abroad, which was denied, and now the I-130 is in progress. If I apply for a regular Mexican visa, will it affect her current petition? I see, for your daughter. Okay, so you're a U.S. citizen. You applied for CRBA for your daughter. That was denied. Now you've petitioned for her on an I-130. If you apply for a visa, it won't affect the I-130. Okay, so this is for anybody who has an I-130 pending and you want to apply for a visa while that's waiting. It won't affect the I-130 that you have applied for a visa, but it's harder to get a visa when you have an I-130 pending because anytime anybody's applying for a tourist visa, the number one thing they're looking for at the Department of State is that you don't have the intention to immigrate to the United States. They want to know that this is a temporary situation. So if you file for an I-130, that's an indication that you intend to immigrate. Sometimes you can still get the visa. A lot of people still have the visa, especially if it's like a long priority day wait. But in general, just know that if you have an I-130 pending and you're applying for a visa, it's less likely that your visa will get approved. Anyone who has applied for asylum, will they be detained even if they have work permits? Probably not. most people who have applied for asylum and have work permits are not getting detained. There is an exception for some of the people who entered on CBP-1 or who entered on parole or who are Venezuelan. That is a group of people that run risk of getting detained no matter what. So if I'm sure my record is clean, is it safe? Can my son petition for me to adjust my status right away when I come back? I'm a DACA recipient. Yes. If you have DACA, you leave, you come back on advanced parole, you don't have any arrest history, your son is 21 years old, he can petition for you when you come back. Oh, these questions are so sad, you guys. Could I be detained for having a tattoo? Yes. I mean, I technically no, there's nothing illegal about that, but that of course is what we've seen. We've seen especially Venezuelans who have tattoos getting detained and sent to prison in El Salvador just because they had a tattoo. So, is that on the table? Yes. I do think that young men are the most vulnerable, and especially young men from Venezuela and maybe Cuba, but mostly Venezuela and the Middle East. Those are the countries that we're seeing a lot of this detention happening. I've been in the US for almost 7 years with asylum status and TPS, paying taxes and following the law. With uncertainty about TPS renewal, I want to explore options to apply for residency. My girlfriend, who arrived in 2023 and has TPS until April, is also concerned about her status if TPS isn't renewed. What are our options for residency and legal status given our situations? We would need to consult with each of you, but in general, because neither of you are going to get legal status through marriage, we want to know if either of your parents have legal status or your kids have legal status. We want to know what your professions are and your jobs are, and if you could get status through your job. And then finally, we'd look at humanitarian options apart from asylum, like maybe a crime victims visa or a trafficking visa, depending upon your work history. So there's a whole series of questions and options that we would work through in a consultation with each of you individually to answer that question. I'm about to wrap up and give you your tip of the week. So if you're watching and you've been thinking, maybe I'm going to ask this question, go ahead and ask it now because I need to wrap up in a minute. I would like to know if there's any way to resolve an issue regarding a robbery that occurred in October 2024. I have a police report for a vehicle that was stolen from me, but I wasn't there at the time and I was not assaulted. I need to know more about what you mean by if there's any way to resolve an issue. In terms of a U visa, crime victims visa, I don't see an option to get legal status. But if you are wondering what's going on with the case, and you just need to call the detective and ask them for an update. All right, guys, let's get to the tip of the week. I've answered all the questions I'm going to get to. I have more for next week. And this one we've done already. I'm going to do it again. Okay. We've got to pick up the phone and call our legislators this week. Please call your legislators, call your congressmen, call your senators, tell them you are upset about the way that the Trump administration is defying the Supreme Court and refusing to bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He's the Salvadoran man who was kidnapped and sent to El Salvador, and the president is refusing to bring him back in violation of clear federal court order. This is not only an impactful moment for Kilmar and his family. This is an impactful moment. This is the moment for our government, our system of checks and balances, and our democracy. This is the moment where it either breaks down or it doesn't. And finally, if they can do this to him, they can do this to you. They are saying they will do this to U.S. citizens. So whether or not you are moved by the case of this man, pick up the phone and call because you could be next or someone you love could be next. Please make a call today. This is the action tip of the week, and it is very important that all of us do it. With that, I will wrap up. I'll see you on Thursday in Spanish and next week in English. Thanks for your time.